Pokemon back in the Indigo season. And honestly, that's all I really have to say about his reputation. Starmie may not be popular to the masses, but don't let that fool you about how good it actually was. Let's see how it did. Also, I'm real sorry this video is late. I am still in college and I had a paper to do, so yeah, those are my excuses. But if you want updates on how my videos are going or for me in general, you can follow me on Twitter, I guess. Right here. Shameless plug. Alright, let's go. For this video, I will be going over Nintendo Cup Gens 1 and 2, Smogon Gens 3 to 6 for singles, as well as, surprisingly, Pokemon Festa for Gen 3 doubles and VGC for Gen 5 doubles, as I could not find significant data on Gen 4 and 6 VGC for Starmie. I know that sounds like a lot, but I'll try to get through it in a reasonable amount of time, so here we go. Gen 1, Starmie was nearly a staple in competitive play thanks to its high speed and water psychic typing. Since special attack and defense was just one stat in Gen 1, Starmie actually had some decent defensiveness too, which was complemented with the move Recover, as well as a solid damage output and a great move pull. Its most used moves consisted of Blizzard due to Blizzard being better in Gen 1, Thunderbolt, Recover, Surf, and a slew of other moves depending on what your team needs. Starmie could cripple a Pokemon, take a hit, recover, or hit a lot of things for super effective damage. Not a lot of things to switch into Starmie, effectively making it one of the top tiers during this meta. Fun fact, it was even used by the champion of the 3rd official Nintendo League, Miyazaru Toru, and unfortunately, I have no picture of this person, but yeah, that's cool. However, no Pokemon is without its weaknesses, as Pokemon even faster than Starmie, though few and far between, being Alakazam and Jolteon, pose a big threat to it, with super effective attacks and a higher special, as well as Slowbro due to its massive bulk and amnesia, and Chansey also for its massive bulk. Despite these weaknesses though, Starmie was still a top threat, seeing itself on many teams. Alright, Gen 2, Starmie continued its usage rate as even with its special defense being set to 85 after the special split, its vast move pool and its speed was still enough to push it to the top. It was still a great fast water type with access to Thunderbolt and Thunderwave. However, in this generation, more players utilized its utility moves such as Light Screen, Reflect, and of course Rapid Spin because of the introduction of spikes. It particularly had a good matchup versus another top tier Pokemon being Steelix because it was faster and it could hit it with water moves. Unfortunately though, Snorlax, who was the undisputed best Pokemon in Gen 2, still gave it loads of trouble because it could take practically anything Starmie could do and set up in its face. Starmie could paralyze it to cripple it, but Snorlax could rest this off. However, because of Sleep Talk Snorlax, some Starmie sets actually carried Nightmare in order to counteract it. Yeah, I didn't know Starmie could actually learn Nightmare, but hey. Alright, Gen 3 Smogon Singles. Starmie again continued its reign as one of the best rapid spinners in the meta because of its typing. Its speed and access to good moves also allowed it to outspeed a number of other fast top Pokemon such as Gengar, Flygon, Salamence, and Tyranitar, though it loses to bulky threats that it can't hit for super effective damage such as Blissey and Snorlax again. It could also lose to other Pokemon that can still tank its super effective hits and hit it back with super effective hits like Celebi and Zapdos. Starmie could be played with or without Rapid Spin, but either way it was still very good. Alright, Gen 3 doubles. This is the first time I have ever covered Gen 3 doubles, and that is because there is very little data on it, since I guess people didn't feel like recording things or it just got lost somewhere. So this Gen 3 doubles is theory crafted from the fact that I saw some old videos of a tournament called Pokemon Festa 2005. This was an event in Japan that was filled with all sorts of stuff, including giveaways, and a VGC style doubles 4-on-4 tournament. From these videos, we see Starmie appear a few times, which means it might have been pretty good. It seems like its moves were Protect because Starmie getting double targeted probably can't take a lot, Hydro Pump, Ice Beam, and Thunderbolt for maximum damage and coverage. This would probably let it hit Pokemon such as Salamence and the Latias for super effective damage, as well as other water types. Its weak matchups, however, look like bulky things with super effective attacks on it, such as Zapdos, Snorlax, which apparently carried Shadow Ball in doubles, as well as Ludicolo. Again, this is all speculation because I only have these videos to go off of, but hey, I try my best with the amount of time I was given. Alright, Gen 4 singles. Starmie continued to be a great offensive or support role. It got a higher damage output thanks to Life Orb being introduced, which it could use in conjunction with Recovery to heal off of recoil damage. Starmie sets are more or less the same as past gens this time around, but with different matchups. It vaporizes Stealth Rock fire users such as Heatran and Infernape. 2-hit KOs a lot of Pokemon with the help of Stealth Rocks, notable ones being Tyranitar, Scizor, Swampert, Jirachi, and Metagross, as well as Celebi, Dragonite, Suicune, and Vaporeon with Ice Beam or Thunderbolt. However, it did get more weaknesses as Pursuit users such as Weavile, Cheetar, and Scizor became more prominent, allowing them to revenge kill it rather quickly. It also is hard countered by Blissey and Snorlax for the same reasons as the previous gens. Though despite all this, its versatility still carried on strong through this generation as well. You're gonna see this as a common theme here, trust me. Moving on to Gen 5 single, Starmie was good again and became a top choice for offensive teams as a spinner, as well as other rain teams since Weather Wars became extremely prominent during Gen 5. It also got its new hidden ability and analytic, which allowed it to do 30% more damage if it moved last, and that includes switch-ins. So basically when Pokemon switch, that counts as a move. And since switching always goes first, that means Starmie's analytic comes into play and does 30% more damage to whatever will be switched in. Starmie could also utilize the move Psy Shock to beat top threats such as Breloom, Tentacruel, and Keldeo. With analytic and stealth rock damage, it could even 2-hit KO bulky Pokemon like Jellicent, Kyurem Black, Rotom Wash, and Blissey, but those would require some place to do so. Its weak matchups are especially defensive Chansey, Celebi, as well as Ferrothorn, and of course, Pursuit users. Alright, Gen 5 doubles. This is also the first time I'm ever covering Gen 5 doubles, and I hope I continue to do more because it's really interesting. And I saw a decent amount of Starmie information on this for some reason, so I felt like covering it. Though Starmie wasn't exactly a top threat, it was still a moderately viable option, rocking a similar set to Gen 3 with the addition of Focus Sash as an item, as well as Psy Shock. It was viable because it could partner with common weather Pokemon such as Abomasnow and Politoed, and utilize its power boosted Surf in the rain or accuracy boosted Blizzard in the hail. It could use Blizzard to hit threats like Thundurus and Latios. However, it had weak matchups for faster Pokemon such as Yanmega, Jolteon, Choice Scarf Chandelure, as well as Sucker Punch users such as Toxicroak and Hitmontop. And that's really it, it's kind of like Water Spout Blastoise, I guess. Alright, finally Gen 6. Surprise, surprise again, Starmie was used a lot, and was used either offensively or as a support, as it could fill the role of either. Just like in Gen 5, it utilized Scald to cause burns and cripple certain Pokemon. Since there isn't really that much change from Gen 5 Starmie to Gen 6 Starmie, the most interesting thing to talk about here is that it got the move Reflect type, which allowed it to copy the type of the opposing Pokemon in order to avoid being hit with super effective attacks, such as Pursuit users like Bisharp. Its access to Psy Shock allowed it to hit Pokemon such as Venusaur, Dragout, and Gengar for super effective damage. With Reflect type, it could even take on Charizard Y with Solar Beam. Starmie had a number of good matchups, but again, it isn't without its bad ones such as Chansey again, Clefable, and Jirachi, as well as bulky water types like Slowbro, Manaphy, Mega Gyarados, bulky grass types like Celebi, Ferrothorn, and Assault Vest Tangrowth, fast electric types like Mega Manectric, and of course more Pursuit users if you're not using Reflect type. But all of these weaknesses, just like with most Pokemon, can be covered with its team, and Starmie definitely helped its team more than it hurt. And that's it. So how good was Starmie? Starmie was great, being the first Pokemon that has been analyzed on the show that was consistently top tier in popular singles formats for every generation, and even having moderate usage in some doubles formats. I hope it continues to be great in Generation 7 too. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'm sorry if that was a bit repetitive, but let me know what you think of Starmie in the comments, and of course which Pokemon I should do next. Alright, later everyone.
"24 chefs, 24 culinary showdowns for 24 hours straight. Which chef will outcook, outpace, outlast the competition?"
No.
Snorlax, the living roadblock and garbage disposal Pokemon. Some of you probably remember Snorlax because of the anime, or because it was blocking your way from advancing in Red and Blue. At any rate, Snorlax's popularity sure has come a long way thanks to things like Pokemon Go, or maybe you bought that Snorlax bean picture, I don't know. Anyway, Snorlax is known to people as the big, tough, tanky, but lazy Pokemon. But how did it fare over the years in competitive formats? Let's find out. In this video, I will give a brief overview of Snorlax over each generation during these popular competitive formats. In Gen 1, Snorlax was equipped with one of the best physical attack and defense at the time, though the rest of his stats were lacking since special was still only one stat, meaning his great special defense it would receive in Gen 2 did not exist yet. Oh, trust me, we will get to Gen 2 real soon. Anyway, since normal types were generally very good due to psychic types scaring the fighting types away, Snorlax was one of the hardest hitters in the game. Snorlax was able to tank 2 Hyper Beams from Tauros, who was considered one of the best wall breakers at the time, as well as 2 Blizzards from Articuno. The main movesets consisted of either physical attacks like Hyper Beam or Earthquake, and of course Body Slam, or special attacks because it could utilize Amnesia. Amnesia at time was like the equivalent of using 2 Calm Minds, so Snorlax would be able to power its special up to high levels before hitting its opponents with either Thunderbolt or Ice Beam. Though Snorlax was powerful, it of course was not invincible. Snorlax could be walled by the likes of Golem or Rhydon, especially if it did not carry Surf. People would often use Golem or Rhydon as switch-ins in order to take its normal hits better. It was also in contention with Tauros for best normal sweeper as they had similar movesets. Unfortunately, Tauros was most often used over it for having a better special and speed stat, allowing it to hit faster than Snorlax and hit more walls. As a wall, Amnesia kept it in contention with Chansey since Chansey had a lot more special bulk. However, Snorlax also has better physical attacks, so it really depended on the team. Either way, Snorlax was definitely one of the best Pokemon in Gen 1. Alright, Gen 2, Snorlax basically became the Meta Knight of this game, though more so for its bulk as opposed to its speed. Snorlax was the undisputed best Pokemon in Gen 2, not including the Ubers of course, because of its incredible special bulk it got, as well as the ability to rest off anything while it's set up with the move Curse. In fact, Snorlax was so bulky relative to the other Pokemon at the time that the only thing that could take out a Snorlax in one hit without a critical hit was another Snorlax using Self-Destruct. Though Ursaring and Granbull did have higher physical attack, Snorlax got double edge, giving it a higher damage yield overall. Snorlax could be played in many ways. However, the most famous set was the Curse set, which usually consisted of the move Curse that increased its attack and defense with lowered speed by 1 stage, a hard-hitting normal move like Double Edge, rest so it can't be Toxic Scald, and Earthquake for coverage. The idea here is to cripple your opponent's Pokemon and start setting up with Curse and watch as Snorlax rips apart your opponent's Pokemon with a hard-hitting Double Edge or Earthquake. Snorlax did not have any direct counters during this time, only checks, which were Steelix and Starmie, who could tank hits from Snorlax well and phase it out with Roar or Whirlwind. However, in a direct one-on If Snorlax is the only Pokemon left, Snorlax would be free to set up with Curse and break through those Pokemon. One could try using Fighting type Pokemon to put a dent in Snorlax, but Snorlax could also hit back hard, even unboosted. Snorlax could just fit itself on every team with its Curse set, Belly Drum set, Sleep Talk set, and whatever you could think of that would be beneficial for your team. Alright, Gen 3, Smoke and Sickle. Snorlax unfortunately wasn't as dominant as it was in Gen 2. Why this is, I'm gonna guess it's because you could no longer max out every stat of a Pokemon at once, and also new Gen 3 Pokemon that check Snorlax. However, it was still one of the top tiers during this time. Curse Lax was still very effective, especially if it's the last Pokemon on your team, because it could no longer be faced by Starmie. Though Curse was still the most popular set, other sets like Sleep Talk, Sub Punch, and Choice Band were effective because they could utilize Snorlax as a tank to the fullest. Depending on which move it had, it could defend itself well. Though as far as good matchups go, Snorlax did not outright counter anything, but was very dangerous if it ever got a chance to set up, and it really depended on which set it was running. However, this time around, since Will-O-Wisp was a thing, Snorlax actually has a hard counter in the form of Weezing, since it could Will-O-Wisp Snorlax to burn it, and thus cut its attack in half, and also use Haste to eliminate the stat boots of Curse without having to switch it out. Starmie and Suicune can wall it early game again thanks to Roar. Celebi also had a good matchup versus it because it could Leech Seed and Calm Mind in his face, as well as various fighting types. Though whether or not Snorlax could handle these Pokemon really depended on the set, besides Weezing. Either way, Snorlax was still a great threat. Alright, Gen 3 Jump Fest of doubles. Just like with Starmie, I only really have these videos to go off of because there's very little information about 2005 Pokemon meta. But anyway, it looked like Snorlax had a set similar to its VGC days. However, I do not know whether or not it used Belly Drum or Curse during this time, so I will just put both of them here as possibilities. It probably could also carry Self-Destruct to do massive damage to everything except Ghost types, and it could Shadow Ball the Ghost types it could not hit with its normal moves. Again, it looks like it did not outright counter anything directly besides special users, but if it could set up, it could run train. Alright, Gen 4, Snorlax continued to be a top tier thanks to its bulk. However, as the metagame progressed, more Pokemon that resist normal types showed up, and Snorlax found itself resisted by a third of the metagame. Surprise, surprise. Curse Snorlax was the most popular set to use. So again, it had a lot of sets. Its main niche in the overuse meta was that it could come in on special attackers and begin setting up. Unfortunately, though, more hard counters to Snorlax showed up with the advent of powerful fighting types such as Infernape and Lucario, in addition to better moves from Machamp and Heracross, who could all take out Snorlax. If Snorlax didn't carry Fire Punch, it could also get walled by Bronzong and Fortress, and it could also be 2-hit KO'd by Metagross and Mamoswine with their stab moves Links of Life Orb. Snorlax still found a place amongst the top tiers because of its ability to set up on special attackers, but it definitely went down significantly in usage than the previous gens. In Gen 4 Double, Snorlax was actually used similarly to how it's being currently used in Gen 7, as a late game Belly Drum Trick Room sweeper. It was even in a couple of finals matches during certain regionals in VGC 2009. The idea is to partner with a Pokemon like Dusknoir who could set up Trick Room and then switch Snorlax in. Pokemon with Psych Up like Dusknoir or Spiritomb could even copy its maximized attack stat after a Belly Drum. Since Trick Room is up, Snorlax being super slow would go first and begin to sweep with its partner. It's also a plus that it's a special tank since special users were pretty rampant during Gen 4 VGC. So Snorlax actually saw a decent amount of usage amongst players. Alright, Gen 5 Smogon OU. Snorlax unfortunately dropped down to the underused tier. Despite finding a niche as a special tank against Sun teams since weather teams were everywhere, more fast fighting types were added during the meta like Terrakion and Keldeo. Snorlax could easily be taken out very quickly. Special teams since weather teams were everywhere. More fast fighting types were added during the meta like Terrakion and Keldeo. Snorlax could easily be taken out very quickly by these Pokemon. Because the Curse set would be too slow, the Choice Band set was preferred instead if anyone ever used Snorlax in OU. Though it was not a low tier Pokemon by any means, it was just too slow to compete with a fast-paced metagame at the time. But at least it was great and underused. In Gen 5 VGC, Snorlax reprised its role as a Trick Room sweeper. Its main partners were obviously ones that could carry Trick Room, so Psychic types, as well as Redirectors. Though this time it seemed to be not used as much as it was still very weak to the fighting types in VGC. And finally Gen 6, Snorlax was once again placed in underused and did not see much usage in OU. Since there isn't much information on why this is in a specific source, I theorize that it is for the same reasons as Gen 5. The metagame became too fast and fighting types were a lot more prominent. Also, as far as special walls go, Chansey was most likely preferred over it since it could take more hits. But hey, again, at least it was one of the best walls in underuse. And that's it. So how did Snorlax do? Well, it was top tier for the first 4 generations, but it gradually dropped off into high to mid tiers in Gens 5 and 6. Snorlax's bulk gave it an edge early on, but as more faster Pokemon kept getting added, it began to drop off since it doesn't have the best speed or physical defense. But at least it is usage in Gen 7 VGC though, for now. Thanks for watching everyone. Now before you go, I have a question for you. I like doing these videos a lot, but I want to bring some variety to this channel. I have some Smash content in the works, but as far as other Pokemon content or really other games in general, I guess, what other type of content would you like to see me do? Let me know in the comment section below, and of course, as usual, comment on which Pokemon you want me to cover next. Alright, peace out everyone.